Ethan scrolled through Instagram after a long trip and froze when he saw his girlfriend posing beside his BMW. The caption claimed she had finally bought her dream car, and hundreds congratulated her without knowing the truth. His pulse spiked as he zoomed in on the license plate and confirmed it was unmistakably the vehicle registered under his name. A creeping sense of dread settled in as he logged into the DMV system, hoping for a mistake that never appeared. The screen showed the impossible. The ownership had been transferred, and his signature had been faked with shocking confidence. Ethan stared at the evidence in disbelief, feeling betrayal replace every last bit of trust he once held for her. In that moment, he knew this wasn't a misunderstanding, but the beginning of something darker spiraling out of control. Ethan shut his laptop and sat in silence before forcing himself to stand and gather every shred of evidence he had. He opened Lana's Instagram again and saved each photo, each caption, and every comment that praised her new purchase. His hands trembled slightly as he recorded her story, making sure to capture the angle showing the exact license plate. He knew screenshots alone weren't enough, so he pulled the car purchase contract from his drawer and laid it on the table. The details hit him harder than before as he traced his real signature with his thumb and compared it to the forged one. He printed the DMV transfer record and circled the signature that looked like a child's imitation of his handwriting. The date on the document made everything worse because she filed it only 2 days after he boarded his flight for work. Ethan realized she must have planned it weeks before and simply waited for him to be out of the state. He grabbed his phone and recorded a quick video showing the documents side by side to preserve the chain of evidence. Then he photographed his ID, the bill of sale, and the original registration still stored in his personal folder. An unease spread through him as he thought about how confidently Lana had displayed the stolen car online. It wasn't a moment of impulse, but a deliberate scheme carried out with disturbing boldness. After an hour of organizing files, he placed everything into a sealed envelope and headed to the nearest police station. The lobby felt cold and strangely quiet as he checked in and waited for an officer to call his name. When Detective Ramirez appeared, Ethan handed him the envelope without saying a word. The detective opened it carefully and studied the papers, raising his brows when he reached the forged transfer form. He asked Ethan a series of questions about the timeline, the relationship, and Lana's access to his personal information. Ethan answered truthfully, feeling both embarrassed and furious that someone he trusted used his absence against him. Detective Ramirez nodded slowly and explained that falsifying a signature on state documents was a serious felony. He added that transferring ownership of a high-value vehicle without consent crossed into grand theft territory. Ethan felt a heavy mix of relief and dread as the detective assured him the case would be fully investigated. The officer advised him not to confront Lana or respond to any messages she might send in the coming days. He explained that contact could compromise the case, and that silence was the safest option for both legal and personal reasons. Ethan promised he would stay quiet even though part of him wanted to demand an answer from her directly. The detective made copies of the papers and returned the originals so Ethan could store them safely at home. Before leaving, Ethan signed an official report confirming the statements he had provided. As he stepped out of the station, the weight of the situation finally settled onto his shoulders. He realized the path forward would be messy, public, and emotionally exhausting, but there was no turning back now. He got into his rental car and stared at the steering wheel, wondering how long Lana had believed she could get away with everything. For the first time since discovering the truth, he felt a strange calm anchored by the certainty that justice had already begun moving. Lana's social media exploded over the next few days, as if nothing in her world had shifted at all. She posted boomerangs of herself, revving the BMW engine, and laughing with a confidence that felt unsettling. Each clip showed her cruising through downtown, with music blasting and friends cheering from the back seat. Ethan watched in silence, reminded of the detective's warning not to contact her under any circumstance. The police had already flagged her profile and were quietly capturing every video she uploaded. Detective Ramirez texted Ethan updates, confirming that the posts strengthened the case more than she realized. Lana livestreamed late at night, bragging about spontaneous road trips and calling the car her biggest achievement. She never mentioned Ethan, acting as if he had never existed or had never owned the vehicle at all. Her friends showered her with praise, insisting she deserved something luxurious after a rough year. Ethan sat behind his darkened phone screen, unsure whether to feel anger or a strange, detached pity. Meanwhile, investigators visited the DMV branch to verify the forged transfer documents. They confirmed the submission was done in person by someone matching Lana's appearance. The clerk remembered her because she was unusually cheerful for someone handling ownership paperwork. She had chatted casually about starting a fresh chapter, as if the process were nothing more than a formality. Detective Ramirez told Ethan that surveillance for the vehicle would begin within the week. Unmarked units started tracking her routes, noting her frequent stops at malls, bars, and her friend's apartment. Lana continued reaching out to Ethan through messages that swung between guilt and denial. One moment she apologized vaguely for hurting his feelings, and the next she insisted he was overreacting. Ethan ignored every notification, letting each message sink into the unread abyss as instructed. His silence seemed to irritate her, making her posts grow more flamboyant and oddly defensive. She recorded rants about people who can't handle your success, clearly aimed at him without nomming him. Her online persona swelled with entitlement, feeding off attention while masking her escalating recklessness. Friends who knew both of them began texting Ethan, asking why he was being cold or dramatic. He sent no explanations, knowing anything he said could jeopardize the investigation. Meanwhile, the police built a timeline showing that Lana had taken the BMW almost daily. They noted the mileage increase and even captured footage of her running a red light during one outing. Detective Ramirez told Ethan that officers were preparing to conduct a vehicle stop once all pieces aligned. He warned him that the arrest would likely be public, given her habit of live streaming nearly everything. Ethan felt uneasy imagining the spectacle, but trusted the process more than the chaos unfolding online. Lana continued posting celebratory dinners, shopping hauls, and long drives along the coast. Every update pulled her deeper into a false sense of security she didn't realize was collapsing beneath her. To her audience, she looked unstoppable and carefree, but investigators saw a trail of evidence tightening fast. Ethan waited quietly as the world she curated began moving toward a breaking point she could no longer escape. The night of the live stream, Lana parked the BMW in front of a popular cafe, phone in hand, oblivious to the cameras. Her friends crowded around, laughing and filming as she flaunted the car like it was her personal trophy. Ethan watched from a safe distance, heart pounding, knowing the police were nearby ready to intervene. Detective Ramirez signaled to the unmarked cars as officers moved into position, keeping the scene calm but controlled. Lana grinned at the screen, waving to her viewers and explaining how she finally got what she deserved. The live chat exploded with hearts, clapping emojis, and comments praising her for her success and boldness. Suddenly, uniformed officers stepped into view, and a sharp voice commanded, "Step out of the vehicle now." Lana froze, eyes widening in disbelief as her friends shouted in panic and confusion. The camera on her phone continued rolling as officers approached, hands on her shoulders, guiding her out of the car. Her screams were drowned by the shocked chatter of bystanders and the faint sound of traffic passing by. Viewers watching online flooded the comments, some cheering, some questioning what had just happened. Ethan remained silent, arms crossed, as the reality of the arrest unfolded exactly as planned. Officers read her rights and placed handcuffs on her wrists, her friends recording everything with phones. The live stream captured her humiliation, her expressions shifting from arrogance to pure panic. When the video spread across social media, reactions were immediate, polarizing, and intense. Family members of Lana called Ethan repeatedly, their voices trembling with anger and confusion. They accused him of being cruel and insisted he had ruined her life in front of everyone. Ethan listened politely, refusing to argue, knowing that explaining the truth would do little to calm them. He could feel the weight of judgment from strangers who had only seen the viral clip. Friends of Lana also called, pressing him to forgive her or let it slide because of their history. Each plea was met with silence, his resolve firm to protect himself and the evidence. Meanwhile, officers placed the BMW in tow, logging the vehicle for impound as part of the ongoing investigation. The scene outside the cafe became chaotic with news crews arriving, capturing the aftermath for local channels. Lana's expressions shifted rapidly as she realized the severity of her situation, her confident mask crumbling. Ethan felt a mix of vindication and exhaustion as the spectacle he had dreaded was now complete. Detective Ramirez confirmed later that the arrest was solid, and all evidence collected would support charges effectively. The viral video made headlines, sparking debates online about justice, privilege, and accountability. Ethan received messages from strangers commending him for standing firm, while also facing harsh criticism from others. He ignored the noise, focusing on the legal process and the careful steps still ahead. Lana remained in custody overnight, facing a reality she had ignored while flaunting stolen property online. Her world of admiration and envy evaporated, leaving only the consequences of choices she thought were harmless. Ethan drove home slowly, the weight of the evening settling over him, knowing this was only the beginning. The arrest was public, messy, and humiliating, but justice had finally started to unfold as it should. A week after her release on bail, Lana seemed to ignore the terms of her court-ordered no-contact rule. She enlisted her new boyfriend to call Ethan, pretending it was a harmless attempt to reconcile. Ethan recognized the number immediately and knew it was a direct violation of the restraining order. He reported the call to Detective Ramirez without hesitation, forwarding all messages as evidence. Within hours, officers returned to Lana's residence to execute a second arrest, catching her off guard. Her bail had already been revoked due to the violation, forcing a higher bond for her next release. The news spread quickly among her circle, leaving friends and family shocked at her reckless behavior. Her mother appeared at Ethan's door later that evening, pleading for him to lie and reduce her daughter's punishment. She begged him to say Lana hadn't called, promising it would save her future if he complied. Ethan listened silently, feeling a mixture of pity and resolve as he calmly refused her request. He explained that honesty was non-negotiable and that breaking the law would only worsen Lana's situation. Meanwhile, Lana's own posts began showing frustration and fear as she realized the seriousness of her actions. She wrote vague apologies online, but the message was diluted by her previous braggadocio and live streams. Detective Ramirez confirmed that the second arrest strengthened the prosecution's case against her. Ethan documented everything, taking screenshots of her attempts to manipulate the situation through friends. Her behavior became increasingly erratic, posting contradictory statements that undermined her credibility. Friends tried to mediate, calling Ethan to request leniency or to convince him to just let it go. He refused each plea, understanding that any concession could jeopardize the legal proceedings. The police monitored Lana more closely, tracking her communications to ensure no further violations occurred. Each new attempt by Lana to reach him was met with careful documentation and immediate reporting. Ethan realized that she believed she could control the narrative through charm or social pressure. Her repeated offenses revealed a pattern of entitlement and disregard for legal authority. He received updates from the court that the bond amount had been increased due to her continued noncompliance. Her social media began showing signs of desperation, with posts about stress and unfair treatment. Family and friends started expressing disappointment openly online, further isolating her from support. Ethan remained disciplined, maintaining distance to ensure the integrity of the investigation. He spent hours organizing evidence, preparing for the next steps in the legal process with meticulous care. The second arrest sent a clear message to Lana that ignoring the law had tangible consequences. Her actions were no longer a private matter. They were now documented and undeniable in court records. Ethan understood the emotional toll, but trusted that following proper channels would lead to justice. The relentless pattern of violation highlighted her inability to accept accountability for her choices. Despite pressure from everyone around him, Ethan held firm, prioritizing legal integrity over social approval. He knew that maintaining composure now would prevent future complications and protect his rights. Each day, Lana's situation worsened while Ethan remained focused, patient, and determined to see the case through. By the end of the week, the escalation of consequences had become clear, signaling that her recklessness could no longer be ignored. The courtroom was tense as Lana entered, her expression a mix of defiance and anxiety. Ethan sat quietly, his evidence neatly organized, ready to present everything he had collected. The judge called the session to order, and the prosecution began outlining the charges against Lana. They presented the DMV documents, showing the fraudulent transfer of the BMW and forged signatures. Each page was highlighted, and comparisons between the real and fake signatures were displayed to the jury. Screenshots from Lana's Instagram showed her flaunting the car, proving knowledge and possession. Her search history revealed queries like how to forge signatures and transfer car without owner, reinforcing intent. Text messages between Lana and her friends demonstrated planning and coordination for the scheme. The prosecution called Harper, Lana's best friend, to the stand to testify about the plot. Harper admitted to discussing the plan with Lana, hoping to reduce her own potential liability. Her testimony confirmed that Lana had acted knowingly and deliberately to claim the vehicle as her own. The defense tried to argue that Lana acted impulsively and without understanding the consequences. But the combined evidence, digital and physical, painted a clear picture of premeditation. Lana's parents sat in the gallery, faces pale, struggling to reconcile their daughter's actions with the child they knew. The prosecution walked the jury through the timeline, showing how the crimes unfolded while Ethan was away. They highlighted the brazenness of Lana continuing to post online, knowing full well the car was not hers. Ethan's organized documentation helped illustrate the systematic collection of evidence and timeline accuracy. The court displayed photos side by side, the contract he signed versus the falsified version Lana submitted. Even minor inconsistencies in the forged paperwork were emphasized to demonstrate intentional deception. Harper's testimony was crucial in linking Lana directly to every step of the plan. Each question from the prosecution revealed Lana's awareness and active participation in the scheme. The judge reminded the jury of the severity of grand theft and document forgery, explaining potential penalties. Lana's expressions changed as she realized the gravity of the situation and how airtight the case was. Her defense attorney tried to mitigate damage, citing stress and influence from friends, but the effect was minimal. The prosecution wrapped up with a compelling argument that her repeated actions showed disregard for law and ethics. Evidence of social media bragging strengthened their claim of intent and consciousness of guilt. The courtroom fell silent as the judge called for closing arguments from both sides. Ethan remained composed, watching Lana's gradual realization that the truth could not be undone. Her parents whispered among themselves, visibly distraught at the mounting evidence against her. The jury deliberated, but the weight of the documentation and testimonies left little room for doubt. Throughout the session, Lana's confidence crumbled, replaced by frustration and fear. Every document, screenshot, and witness testimony contributed to a narrative she could no longer contest. Ethan felt a mix of relief and exhaustion, knowing justice was proceeding as it should. The court session concluded with scheduling for sentencing, leaving Lana and her family to face the consequences. Her world of pretense and control was unraveling publicly, and the reality of accountability had set in fully. Ethan quietly collected his notes, understanding that the hardest part was over, but the resolution was still coming. The evidence he had meticulously preserved ensured that truth, not manipulation, would prevail in the end. Lana sat quietly as the judge read the sentencing agreement, her hands shaking in her lap. The prosecutor outlined the terms of the plea deal, emphasizing accountability and restitution for Ethan. She would serve 6 months in prison, suspended over an 18-month probation period. Additionally, she was ordered to complete 3 years of supervised probation with regular check-ins. Financial penalties were imposed, including fines and full reimbursement of Ethan's legal expenses. Her parents listened in stunned silence as the details confirmed the severity of the consequences. Ethan received confirmation that the court would enforce repayment of all attorney fees and related costs. The judge reminded Lana that any further violation could immediately trigger the full suspended sentence. Lana's attempts to appear composed failed as tears streamed down her face, betraying her inner panic. The plea agreement required her to admit guilt on record, leaving no room to dispute the charges later. Her mother whispered apologies to Ethan, expressing deep regret over the chain of events. Ethan acknowledged them calmly, knowing the restitution process would restore some closure. Lana's social media accounts attempted to spin the narrative, portraying her as a victim of circumstances. Followers debated online, but the overwhelming evidence ensured most saw the truth behind the posts. Her public image suffered irreparably, with friends and acquaintances distancing themselves gradually. Ethan reclaimed his BMW, verifying that all documents were properly corrected and updated in his name. Driving it again felt liberating, a tangible reminder of justice served and personal boundaries respected. Lana, released from custody, struggled to find employment due to the criminal record and damaged reputation. She moved back with her parents, adjusting to a drastically reduced lifestyle compared to her previous independence. The financial responsibilities and legal obligations forced her to reassess her priorities and behavior. Ethan continued his daily routine, focused on work, friendships, and personal well-being. He reflected on the ordeal, recognizing how warning signs had appeared early in the relationship. The experience taught him the importance of vigilance, boundaries, and protecting personal property. He remained grateful for the support of law enforcement and his own careful documentation. While Lana faced ongoing consequences, Ethan's life gradually returned to normalcy and stability. He felt empowered knowing he had acted decisively and legally, avoiding unnecessary confrontation. The legal system worked as intended, providing restitution and consequences for deliberate wrongdoing. Social media attention faded, leaving only a factual record of events and lessons learned publicly. Ethan's sense of security and freedom reinforced his belief in standing firm against manipulation. Lana's continued presence in the community was marked by caution and the reality of her mistakes. Her attempts to rebuild were hampered by public knowledge of her criminal actions and poor decisions. Ethan maintained focus on personal growth, appreciating the clarity and peace gained from the resolution. The BMW symbolized both victory and restored autonomy, a reminder of the importance of boundaries. He avoided bitterness, instead valuing the experience as a lesson in trust, vigilance, and personal rights. The resolution brought closure, ensuring that justice was served and personal integrity remained intact. Lana's choices had consequences, and Ethan's measured actions ensured accountability was clear and complete. He moved forward with confidence, knowing he had protected himself and recovered what was rightfully his. Ethan drove his BMW through the quiet streets, enjoying the freedom of a life reclaimed. He reflected on the events, realizing how clearly the warning signs had been ignored in the past. The betrayal had been painful, but it taught him the value of trust and firm boundaries in relationships. He felt a renewed sense of independence, knowing he had defended his rights without compromise. Friends and family admired his composure, though some still struggled to understand his restraint. Social media faded into background noise, leaving only lessons learned and personal growth intact. Lana lived with the consequences of her actions. Her reputation and opportunities diminished drastically. Ethan accepted that she might never fully acknowledge her mistakes or understand the impact on him. He focused on his work, hobbies, and the peace that came from living a life free from manipulation. The BMW remained a symbol of both justice and the clarity he had gained from the ordeal. Ethan no longer feared confrontation, but knew when to act with patience and strategy. He found satisfaction in fairness, seeing that accountability had restored order to a chaotic situation. Life continued, calm and measured, with lessons carried quietly yet firmly in his mind. Ethan remained vigilant but optimistic, ready to embrace the future without repeating past mistakes. The experience had ended, but the wisdom he gained ensured he would navigate life with clarity and confidence.